In this one, former England women's batting coach and current Leicestershire Head of Talent Pathway, Maiden, gives a masterclass on how to bat in cricket with correct rhythm, balance and alignment. Let's go.
I think so. One thing I would say from my point of view is I'm really keen on encouraging players to learn how to move properly and to incorporate all the movement into all their cricket. So what we do, I believe, at times as coaches, is break movements down into too much detail. So we break it down into a position as a batsman that might happen for like a split second of time. So I'm really keen on trying to encourage movement in batsmen, and as long as the movement is aligned towards their target, then that's fantastic. So I'll give you an example, for instance. So if I was doing down the wicket stuff against spin, most people would coach people to come down the wicket and stop and hit the ball, a bit like this. So they'd come down, get to the pitch, stop and hit the ball. But all that for me is doing is, if you're coming down the pitch, you've got to come down and generate some speed. You've got to come down and get to the pitch quickly. So if you're looking to stop before you get to the pitch, all you're going to do is slow down before that point. Because to stop, you have to start, there has to be a slowing down process. So what I encourage in our players is to come down and to keep the movement going through the ball, which as long as they're aligned and they're controlled, they can do really easily, and it keeps momentum, it gives them speed, and it can help them generate power. So for instance, a slight difference than the way I would expect them to do it is to come down and move through the ball when they hit the ball. And that, like I said, as long as it's controlled. So my main fundamentals of batting would be rhythm, balance and alignment. And the balance and alignment one are very much come hand in hand, because balance is never still in any sport. You know, it is always moving. There's not a sport in the world where someone is absolutely static. So it's not about being balanced on one leg and being still. It's about controlling your body while it's moving. So the best way to do that is to make sure that everything's going towards its target, and as long as that movement is in a line, a straight line towards where you're wanting to go. So if it's down the pitch, if you're coming down the pitch, and generally I would say it's towards the stumps at the bowler's end is a good starting point. As long as movement happens there, then you can be controlled and everything can go towards your target and you're all good. Another example would be, people talk a lot about creating a base. My challenge to that would be, for me, a base, if you think about a base of anything is very static. So if I'm thinking about a base, a tripod has a base, that set of stumps has a base, and it's all very, very static, it's very stationary. In batting, we don't want to be stationary, we want to have controlled movement. So I don't like the word base. And my challenge to anybody who talks about base as being really important would be, there are so many people, and I can show you so many images of players who play off one leg, or who play a back foot punch against a pace bowler, and they play it with both feet off the ground. So our obsession with base, and most people would say, yeah, but they're in a base before they jump and before they move. But why would we be bothered about that? If it's only for a split second at a time, why aren't we thinking about creating movement and allowing people to hit the ball off one leg, or to hit the ball with both feet in the ground, in the air, and have all that lovely movement and control that movement. So a good example would be, for leg side play, I would encourage people to play and allow their body to move through the ball. So people would talk a lot about opening out, keeping that back foot still and hitting the ball towards mid-on. But for me, that just creates too stationary a position, and people will end up playing with this back leg as an anchor. People will end up playing across their front pad because the weight is back here and is stationary. So what I would encourage would be to hit the ball and allow that right side and their body weight to go down the pitch. So if you're playing off your pads, you start off in a fairly side-on position, and you want to hit the ball in this way, you can't stay side on. You're always going to end up in a front on position with your weight going this way. So I would just encourage them to hit and let that right side come through the ball, so that they are accessing the ball in front of their body. And as long as their head's going down the pitch, the problems you'll see would be if they're going this way, then that'd be an issue. But as long as their weight's going down the pitch, you're happy. I would say in general, there'd be lots of coaches out there who have players who fall over. It's a common thing. I don't think you can stop someone falling over. What you need to do is get them to get their weight going in the direction that you want it to go. So it's a bit like if you say don't think of a pink elephant, everyone thinks of a pink elephant. So what we want is, if you say stop falling over, well, they can't stop falling over. What you need to do is find ways of getting them to get their weight going this way more rather than that way. And great things that you can use would be a TheraBand. So if I bat here and you pull me from behind, I have to force my weight this way. So that's one way. Another really good way to coach balance, I think, would be if you want them to hold their weight better and go that way down the pitch and not fall to the offside, why don't we try putting someone on a slanted box? So if you imagine they're batting at Lords down the hill and you feel like your weight's going that way, so if you put them on that, they have to fight really hard to make sure that their weight comes that way. So it's a bit like overtraining. So if they batted in that position on a box, on a slant or on a slope for a period of time, and then you take the slope away, they would feel much more balanced and able to go down the pitch rather than their weight going offside. So it would act like a natural coping mechanism they would find to make sure that they're not travelling in that direction to the offside, but they are travelling down the pitch. So that might be something people could try. But generally, I would say, if I could give anybody some advice or some tips, is encourage movement, get people to control movement, but don't limit it. What we don't want is players to have to be put in positions where it acts like a cast. So when you break a bone or when you wear an orthotic because the podiatrist tells you don't move biomechanically correctly, all that does is set you in a position, and then your body finds a way out to adapt. And there's lots of research about orthotics out there and the pros and cons of those. We want to encourage batsmen to find the answers with movement, not by putting them in a set position, because it'd be very hard for them to find that set position again when they are moving and when they're playing the ball. So encourage movement, get them to control the movement, but all the time they should be looking to move and to adapt and find new ways. Going back to what my previous point, my main fundamentals of batting would be rhythm, balance and alignment, because over the years, having coached batting for a long time, if you try and break down people's methods, the best players that they've ever been, and all those different, there's thousands of people who bat in the world game, they all do it slightly differently. So if one of your fundamentals, for instance, is side on setup, then Steve Smith will come along and prove you wrong. If one of your fundamentals is that you need to have your eyes level, then I can show you some images of Ricky Ponting where his eyes were in this sort of position. So there's lots of variety in the way people do things, and the key to coaching is to try and help the individual find what suits them and try and work with what they do. So I don't believe you have to be side on. I don't believe you have to be front on. I think there's all different styles, and like I said in my video before, that generally traditional methods have always been broken by someone new who, Bradman picked the bat up different to how it had ever been done before. Steve Smith stands in a different way probably than it's ever been done before. There'll always be people who are trying to change convention and find new ways, because as soon as you find a new way to do things, the bowlers have to come up with a new solution. And if you ask any bowler out there, the hardest people generally to bowl at are people who do things differently. They're the ones that cause them the most problems. And that's what sport is about putting the person under pressure, your opponent under pressure. So we should embrace difference, we should coach difference, and but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and get someone side on or try someone open. It just means there's no right or wrong. There is no quick fix, and ultimately what suits them, that they will work out over time with your help. So a lot of coaches would talk about, going back over the years, would talk about high elbow, for instance, and I'm going to use this as an example of how I would coach and my philosophy, which is to coach the outcome and let the outcome find the technical model or the method that you want. So for instance, people who talk about high elbow want the player to have a high elbow so that they present the bat face square. But I would work on making sure that they present the bat face square and not worry about the elbow. So I would talk a lot about head, bat and ball being all in alignment. So if you can create a straight line, if you play a straight bat shot, so obviously discounting cross-batted shots, but if you play a straight batted shot, what you generally want to do is create a straight line between the ball, the bat, and your head. And if you can do that, wherever you're hitting the ball, your elbow and the rest of your body parts will find the solution, and they'll work it around. So I would use the bat face as much as possible. So my young boy who's 6 doesn't really like cricket, but he likes hitting a ball. He always hits the ball to the leg side. It's just, he just smashes it and it goes that way. So instead of me telling him to, use his front elbow more or to use his top hand more, I don't believe that we should separate the hands. I believe that they work together. So I don't want to tell him to use his top hand more or anything like that. But if I tell him to hit the offside, he naturally finds a shape of the shot that's going to make sure the ball goes and the bat face is in a straight line. So I would use the outcome. So I'd say to him, Finley, instead of hitting that wall, what I want you to do, I want you to hit that bush over there in the garden. And then he naturally then has to find his own way to get the bat face and the ball going in that direction. So that's how I would do it. Another good example would be, people talk a lot about the sweep shot and about pull shot, and they talk about get your hands high to low. For me, what I would do is say, right, I want you to hit the ball into the bottom of the net. Or I want you to make the ball bounce when you play a sweep shot. I want you to hit it and make it bounce before it hits the net. So that way you're coaching them to their hands. You don't need to talk about their hands or their specific body parts because they will do that automatically, but you use the outcome to get the desired movement pattern that you want. And those are just a couple of examples, I don't always get it right, but that would be something I would attempt to do as often as possible.